Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. We review anything and everything. And today we're getting into the Hammond, the Jurassic World Hammond Collection Allosaurus review. Now, everybody knows who's been into collecting any of the Jurassic World, whether it's the main line or the Hammond Collection line, for the last, we'll say, like year and a half or year, that I'll actually, honestly will say even like 2 years actually, has been evolving all the lines. Whatever comes inside the Hammond Collection line, there's always updates, and then that gets trickled down into the main line, which the main line's getting updates, but the Hammond Collection is always the first to get the main updates, and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, it keeps setting a bar of new things that are added and whatnot. And this figure is actually no different. I had before applauded to say that of the Hammond Collection, my favorite that was done was the Carnotaurus, and later I'll bring that into the scene for the purpose of comparison, because these two are actually on a similar scale in terms of size and whatnot. But that to me like set the bar as the best Hammond Collection, at least meat eater, theropod dinosaur up until that point. And this one definitely could be in that running to be slightly better, or at least equal, but with certain modifications that enhance it to a degree. Now, we're going to get into that. First, I want to just kind of jump into the box for a little bit. Let me just move the figure back a little. And you can see here your kind of standard design that they do for the Hammond Collection. Just on the camera and the way this is viewing right now, it almost makes it look like the image of the Allosaurus pops out 3D, but that's not the case. And then here you see, it's actually, sometime they would show a picture that depicts the movie scene as far as like a clip from the movie. But in this case, it's actually the scene of, it says that here, Battle at Big Rock. It was a trailer scene, if I'm not mistaken, because I don't think it was in the movie, but a trailer scene of Dominion that showed the Allosaurus attacking like some people who were like at a park or camping or something to that effect. It actually shows the details right down here. In the aftermath of the events at the Lockwood Estate, a camping trip goes awry when a family must protect themselves from the fierce Allosaurus. As the confrontation escalates, the delicate balance of coexistence is dangerously tested. So this right here is, like I said, from a scene that, from the best of my knowledge, was just really a clip in the mix. It wasn't a, I just seen something that's very interesting, but was a clip just like in the mix, but it wasn't actually in the movie. I think it was like a trailer type of thing or something like that. But what I just noticed is this right here. It looks like it's like you can pull it out, almost like a cutout. Anyway, enough with the box. Let's get into the figure. Now, this figure here, and I had to put it in this pose right here because the truth is there's a positive and a negative that goes hand in hand with this, with some of the upgrades of this figure. So one thing you might notice right off the back is that tail doesn't have any, for such a long tail, there's no additional joints. It's just this point here. This tail has a bendy wire in it that I feel, though some of the other Hammond Collection ones had bendy wires in them, this one feels next level. And maybe it's just I never tested the other ones that much, or whatever the case is. I mean, I did play around with some of them, but this one really can curve and really is just, maybe it's because it's so long of a bendy wire that it has more room to kind of flex because it's a larger bendy wire, whereas a smaller bendy wire in some of the ones where like they'll have a section here which is hard plastic, and then here would be soft plastic, and there's not as much bendy wire tail, so you can't get as much of a bend in it. This one has more room to kind of bend. So I don't know if that's the reason why, but nonetheless, it definitely gives a lot more range in that regards. The negative is this tail is very long. Allosaurus naturally has a long tail, so I won't say this is because of it not having joints to bend in other places. I don't think that affects the weight, even though if you did curl it down a little bit, it will create a better center of gravity. But nonetheless, you see how I have to have it angled like this while that weight of the front comes downwards very sharp and heavy, because the weight of that tail is so heavy because it's so long that it's not so much that it's heavy, but because it's so long, it creates an imbalance where the center of gravity, you need to kind of angle him in a way to give him more weight in the front, because that tail being so long throws off the center of gravity. But this was the way I was able to pose him while you can see his full length. He's definitely a very long figure. But the thing about it is Allosaurus has always been a very long dinosaur for his size and weight. He's not nearly as large as, say, a T-Rex, but he's almost as long as a T-Rex. Now, some estimates used to say that he was close to like 40 feet long or 38 feet long. I recently had looked up, and I mean, there's different sources you can get from. I asked my smart speaker earlier, and it had told me that Allosaurus was 28 feet long. So we're going to do the measurements and do the scaling and see how it fits into the scaling of the 3 3/4 figures. This is, I was going to say this is Claire, but this is of course not Claire. This is Ellie. And we're going to see how it scales with Ellie. So first, let's just get into the details of things. Obviously, he has the glass eye. I don't know how much. Okay, I was blocking that a little bit with my hands with the light. It's not easy to see because it definitely is a small eye, but I mean, it is a glass eye. You can't. I can see the pupil outside of the camera, but I feel like in the camera, there you go, it can't be seen all that well, but you can see it there now. It's not very easy to see, but I don't think it really detracts from it because it is a small eye. The details on it obviously are nice. They have the realistic teeth. Now, all things are going to have these realistic teeth now, but obviously the proportions of the teeth look very nice, serrated type, sharp, thin, knife-like, like the Allosaurus should have. They're not bulky or anything like that, but they also are very curved. You see, they really put a lot of work in that dynamic of it being curved. So I think that's nice because the Allosaurus definitely has different types of teeth than what other dinosaurs have, meat-eating dinosaurs. So that's a higher level of detail right there in terms of not just plotting them down, but giving them that curvature. And you see how they're angled, unless this is just my copy, but it really looks like they put that effort to make it a little bit different. In addition, like I said, you see the coloring here, the body and the scaling. He doesn't have as heavy of a fat belly area as Carnotaurus, but that's cool because it fits with the way the Allosaurus was designed. Still looks very nice. Still has that kind of curvature of his body, at least the way you can angle him, which is nice. The neck, I think, is done in a way where they're getting better at making these not look like, you know, stand out as much. These little collars around the neck don't stand out as much as they used to. And then to have all this kind of detailed paint and still make it look seamless is pretty good, where the colors, all those kind of different colors from the light tan, the darker bluish gray up here, and still just kind of have that kind of going all the way through. So I think that's nice. And then it even goes to both sides the same over here. So that's pretty good. Now, the feet also is one thing that they got it right when they did the Carnotaurus, and they stuck with that. The proportions of the legs are great, and the feet themselves are great. They're not oversized anymore. He's got his 3 claws, so his hands are bigger than obviously a T-Rex's. I don't know if these hands if they should be a little smaller than that, but they still look fine overall. Now, this tail is magnificent. It just really has a lot of play to really bend. You can see that this doesn't have any of the bendy wire, and that's fine because you don't want it to break, but it really can bend. And I realized that because my kids, who I bought this for, was really just bending this thing all around, and it was like, wow. And that was their favorite part, just bending this tail in all types of crazy positions and whatnot. Now, like I said, because of that, I personally, oh, there we go. We got him standing up a little bit better. I was having trouble at first getting him to stand at a higher position. See right there, the weight gives in the reverse and it falls. So that's about the height I can get of him without him falling. And the truth is, Allosaurus probably would be, for the most part, in this kind of pose anyway, with that kind of hunting kind of direction of his head. But nonetheless, it's not, I'm going to put Ellie right next to him to kind of give you that height sense of how tall she is next to him in that position. So you can see he's definitely scooped down pretty low, squatting down pretty low. And it's not easy to get him in a position, I feel, much different than that, because that weight of that tail, because it's so long, creates a center of gravity where it really is offbeat. So it's a great figure. This has nothing to do with I don't think it has anything to do with the bendy type of tail being different. It's more so just Allosaurus has a really long tail, and that just comes with the territory of that. That's the case. The little spines on his back look really nice. They are soft material, so that's good too. Like I said, everything on him just is very nice. The only thing is getting him to stand. This is the position I can get him to stand in. Now I'm going to do my quick measurements, as I always do, in this kind of size position, because to be honest with you, I can't really get him in another position. And for the most part, he is 20 inches long. And I guess we'll do the hips for him, just because I can't get him. I would measure at the head, but his head is lower because I can't get him in that position. The hips is about, it's really like 6.25 inches, we'll say. It's not necessarily 6.5. So times divided by, so he is considered 10 feet tall at the hips, and his scaling to Ellie, let's assume Ellie is 6 feet, not exactly 6 feet, but 3 3/4, reaching about 6 feet is just the measurement I use. He's about 10 feet tall at the hips, and his length at 20 inches is 32 feet. So I definitely think that this Allosaurus is very accurate in his size, because like I said, I asked my smart speaker how long Allosaurus is, and it said 28 feet. And though I've seen longer exaggerations where he goes into the, they say like 38 feet range, I think that somewhere maybe around 30 feet is a more comfortable, believable range, especially considering the size of an Allosaurus, but also considering the fact that most of the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World line figures they used to be undersized. So for him to be in a portion that ever since the Carnotaurus, a lot of them have been exactly where they need to be. That's been really good. And even the T-Rex of the Hammond collection one was a little bit longer. I thought he was 25 inches. He is actually 24 inches, but it's still longer by almost a good 3 inches more than what the regular mainline ones used to be. So that was a big improvement towards him being closer to scale in terms of length. So they're getting more on point with that as well. And I want to also just bring into the frame the Carnotaurus here. Now, I have him in a pose that's a little less the norm for him that I would normally stand him in. And now I had him standing, and now he doesn't want to stand anymore. There we go. And of course, he takes a dive. I guess he was a little jealous. Now you can see here with the Carnotaurus, and even though I do have his tail like a little bit bent, let me try to get him in a good standing pose, because apparently he doesn't want to stand in this pose. But even when you have trouble getting them to stand, I still prefer this over the big, huge, what do you call them? Like clown feet that the other ones would have. Bring him a little more into frame. So one thing you can see here is how he has the break in his tail, and that's what I was referring to there. And other than that, just they look nice together, because Carnotaurus is not as long. He does seem to be almost like a little bit more bulky. I don't know if that's true in real life, but he's definitely not as long. But it's definitely very interesting. Let me close his mouth. Okay, he almost was gonna take a spill there. But yes, definitely you could see, and not to knock this one, I thought that the neck area articulation was great. You could see that it's got even tighter in terms of less gaps on the Allosaurus. So everything is getting better in general. So Carnotaurus is my favorite of the Hammond collection ones. And now I can honestly say that the Allosaurus's feet actually are a bit bigger than Carnotaurus's. Now, I won't call that a knock because it's still not clown feet size. It's maybe they did that because I don't know if his feet are naturally that much bigger than Carnotaurus, but they probably did it because of the fact that Carnotaurus, even though his feet look very nice and proportionate to himself, I definitely think that if Allosaurus had smaller feet, it would be even harder to get him to stand, as it already is hard, as you've seen, for me to get him to stand because of his tail. We got to keep in mind too that when it comes to these figures, a real life Allosaurus or any dinosaur, because they'd actually be using their muscles to balance their gravity and their center of balance of weight, they don't have to worry about balancing themselves if they were alive versus us trying to balance them in a still position. So they'd actually be using muscles to actually counterweight, like maybe their tail being a little too heavy or whatever the case is. The only way they would be able to offset something like that in a figure form is to maybe put some weights in the stomach, a little weight, not heavy, but a little weight, maybe a little kind of maybe like a little metal bar the size of like maybe a tiny magnet or something like that, like one of those kind of small size little metal pieces. That way, you know, it would be able to kind of hold them a little bit, and that would kind of off balance, like, you know, the weight. But other than that, you kind of got to work within reason. So I think that that's why they probably increased the size of the feet. With that being said, you guys, as always, like, share, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.